Stories of airline passengers being delayed or asked to change because of their outfits have made recent news headlines. Do airlines have dress codes? What should you wear to avoid travel trouble? The advocates have the real deal. Comfortable clothing is key when you travel, but if you look too comfortable or reveal too much, you might be delayed.
This might seem controversial to some, but airlines actually do have the right to refuse admission if a passenger isn't dressed to their standards, right?
When we enter into different establishments, maybe it's a restaurant or even a grocery store or convenience store, you see that sign that says, "We reserve the right to refuse service," no shirt, no shoes, no service. Well, think about that with airplanes as well. The airlines, they do have the right to refuse service based upon the way a person is dressed. Now, of course, airlines are not expecting folks to show up in a three-piece suit and a ball gown or a dress or just overly dressed, but you should be dressed appropriately for public behavior.
Elaine Swan is an etiquette expert and former flight attendant. She says each airline has its own policies. We found some carriers' dress codes online. One airline says passengers must dress appropriately. Bare feet or offensive clothing aren't allowed. Another airline says it can refuse to transport people when the passenger's conduct, attire, hygiene, or odor creates an unreasonable risk of offense or annoyance to other passengers. But it's mostly left up to employees' discretion.
It is most certainly the airline's right to make that choice. And we as consumers and travelers have to think first before we travel. Keep in mind that we're traveling with people with children and folks who have all sorts of different challenges or what have you.
When you were a flight attendant, did you ever witness any issues with passengers' clothing?
When I was a flight attendant, there was one particular instance where a gentleman showed up and he had on, the tank top type shirt. But the thing about it, it wasn't just the tank top type shirt. He also had that on with some shorts that were a little short for a gentleman to be wearing. So when he sat down, it made it a little bit uncomfortable for folks who are around him. So as you're walking up and down that plane, so that was a gentleman where we asked if he had something else that he could change into. He wasn't happy about it, but if he wanted to get to his final destination, he had to make that change. So he did.
So what's the best way to avoid outfit turbulence? Keep it simple.
When you're traveling on an aircraft, one of the things you want to keep in mind is comfort. Oftentimes, I think folks get it a little bit mixed up and they think, well, I'm on an airplane and it seems very private, but you are actually in a public space. So avoid pajamas, even athletic wear is something that you should probably leave for exactly where it's supposed to be, in the gym. Although you're going to perhaps a fun destination type place, you want to be mindful of how you're appearing in public. Keep in mind that people will make an assessment of you based upon the way you present yourself. And so when you present yourself in a decent manner, then people will then treat you in kind. But also make sure that you dress smart enough to be bumped up to first class just in case there's a seat there. Always think from that perspective.
You can often find an airline's rules on its website. Look for what's called a contract of carriage.